Dearest Creator, it was never my intention for this to unfold. Yet, I never imagined that the threads of my life would begin to fray in the sterile confines of a hospital waiting room. Not beside the vending machine that perpetually devoured my dollar. Not with that incessant beeping of machines echoing from behind closed doors. Not while my husband lay motionless beneath the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, tubes protruding from him, resembling a mere shadow of the man I once vowed to love. And certainly not with Tom. His laughter echoed through the sterile halls of the hospital, a sound too vibrant for such a somber place, I recall pondering. That is the initial point. His laughter seemed out of place in that sterile environment. It felt warm, almost foreign, excessively vibrant. It filled me with disdain. Until I did not. For 2 decades, Tom stood as my husband's closest companion. He attended our wedding. He assisted us in our moving endeavors on 2 occasions. He stood by us as we welcomed our first dog into our lives, and as we faced the heart-wrenching moment of saying goodbye. He was kin. When my husband's diagnosis was revealed, Tom was the first to arrive. He remained by my side through each cycle of chemotherapy. He arrived with snacks, shared silly remarks to elicit a smile, and generously offered his coat when the chill of the waiting room set in. Initially, it brought a sense of solace. Recognizable. Yet, there were instances, fleeting, subtle, when I would sense it. As our paths crossed near the coffee stand, his hand grazed mine, a fleeting touch that lingered in the air. His gaze lingered on me as tears streamed down my cheeks, as if he were etching the contours of my sorrow into his memory. The manner in which I remained steadfast. I have resumed the practice of journaling. Years had slipped by without a single word gracing the page. Yet, I found myself in need of a space to harbor the thoughts I dared not voice. Day 11, 4:13 p.m. Tom arrived with almonds in that ridiculous crossword book once more. My husband was ill and vomited 3 times. I instructed Tom to return home, yet he chose not to comply. He lingered in the hallway as I cradled the basin. I caught the sound of him humming. The solitary sound lingered, a rare comfort amidst the chaos, preventing the urge to cry out. 15th day, 6:45 in the morning. Awoke from a dream I never intended to experience. Tom found himself immersed in it, merely gazing without a single touch. That was even more dreadful. One afternoon, I entered the hospital room to discover my husband peacefully asleep, while Tom animatedly read from a rather absurd crime novel. His voice carried a gentle quality, while his expression remained a mystery. He remarked that you've always had a fondness for this author. He whispered upon spotting me. I did, I replied. During my time at university. He wore a smile. You continued to bite your lip when the tears threatened to spill. Are you aware of that? I averted my gaze. It was not love. Not at that moment. It was something more primal. Such acknowledgement. My loneliness acknowledged his, and they exchanged a silent nod across the distance that separated us. I convinced myself it was merely a bond of friendship, that it held no significance. I felt a deep sense of gratitude. It is remarkable that someone could harbor such feelings after enduring weeks devoid of sleep, intimacy, and genuine conversation. Yet again he invaded my dreams that night. Upon awakening, I found no trace of shame within me. A surge of vitality coursed through me, as if a part of me had been in slumber as well, and it had only just begun to see the world. On the evening of February 6th at precisely 10:27 p.m. once more, I observed my husband drift into slumber, his words trailing off into silence. He recounted a dream he had, something involving his high school football team, but midway through, his voice simply dwindled away. The medication was taking effect. That is, at least what the doctors proclaimed. Yet it lacked the essence of true healing. It was akin to vanishing into thin air. He has taken to sleeping more these days, oblivious to it all: phone calls, unexpected guests, even my quiet sobs in the bathroom, the faucet's steady flow masking my tears. Tom remains awake. He sends me messages late at night. Concise elements. A humorous image or video that captures a moment of cultural significance. A photograph captures the vending machine, where yet another snack is ensnared behind the glass, tantalizingly out of reach. Once simply, "Are you all right?" I was not. However, I responded with a simple, Yeah. On the night that followed, he made the call. He mentioned that he was stationed outside the hospital. Sleep eluded me, he confessed. It felt off being back home. As I donned my coat, I made my way downstairs to meet him. The lobby stood deserted. The nurses offered not a single glance as I quietly slipped through the side door. We remained in place. He lingered in his truck, the engine humming softly, warmth enveloping the interior and misting the glass. We remained untouched. Yet it was on that night that everything changed. He recounted tales I had never encountered, of how he and my husband would stealthily sip beers behind the bleachers. He once harbored dreams of becoming a writer, yet the pages remained blank, and the stories untold. He remarked, "You know, I believe he's aware that he is departing." I remained silent, was unable to. Then he gazed at me, not hurriedly, not as if it were an error, but as if he had been intending to for ages. And I sensed it deeply. The yearning, the pain lingering beneath each unspoken word. February 10th, 1:02 a.m. This evening I removed my wedding ring, only for a fleeting instant, merely to experience the sensation. I replaced it before settling in for the night. Yet my hand bore an unfamiliar sensation, as if the skin held onto the memory of every caress. A week later, Tom arrived at the hospital carrying food with him. Authentic nourishment. Thai takeout from that quaint spot we once adored but hadn't graced with our presence in ages. He recalled my request. We lingered at the far end of the hallway, close to the exit. He presented me with chopsticks as if we were on a date. Naturally, that word was never uttered by us. Yet it seemed that way. A clandestine affair. Purloined item. In the midst of it all, a laugh escaped me. It had been weeks since I last found myself laughing. I pressed my hand to my lips and surveyed the surroundings, a wave of fear washing over me. "Feel free to laugh," Tom remarked. "You are still permitted to experience emotions." Our gazes locked, and his hand brushed against my knee. Only that. His hand lingered there as if it were meant to be. Not captivating, not inquiring, simply existing. Yet I remained still. February 14th, 11:59 p.m. The eve of Valentine's Day. This morning was consumed by the sight of my husband leaning over a plastic bucket, his body racked with the violent motions of vomiting. The evening unfolded within the confines of Tom's truck. He refrained from kissing me. Yet, as he cradled my face and whispered, "You don't have to do this alone," a part of me yearned for him to take that step. Oh, how I longed for him to. And in that fleeting instant, had he leaned in just a fraction more, I believe I would have surrendered without hesitation. Yet he did not. Perhaps that only exacerbated the situation, for it signified that we were both acutely aware of our intentions. On the 20th of February, at precisely 3:14 in the afternoon, as I sat in the hospital cafeteria, the rain began to fall. Not merely a sprinkle, genuine rain. Echoes of thunder resonate in the distance. Chilling, piercing, the sort that ignites a yearning for connection. It had been 3 days since I last laid eyes on Tom. Not since that fateful evening in the truck. Not since the day of love. I reassured myself that the distance was beneficial. Secure. He likely experienced a sense of guilt. I ought to have as well. Perhaps I did. Yet, predominantly, I simply missed him. I drifted through the corridors like a specter. The nurses offered smiles reminiscent of those given to someone who has misplaced an unnamed treasure. I found my husband in a deep slumber when I went to check on him. His lips bore the parched evidence of neglect. His skin bore a faint gray hue. I departed once more. Roaming. I found myself in the dusty storage room tucked away at the far end of the second floor. The stillness enveloped the space, abandoned since the final touches of the last renovation. I settled into a folding chair, the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the windows enveloping me in its embrace. At that moment, the door let out a haunting creak. Tom. Initially, he remained silent. He just crossed the threshold, water cascading from his coat. "You didn't respond," he remarked. Words eluded me. We lingered in that small, neglected room, the rain drumming relentlessly against the windowpane outside. And then our lips met in a tender kiss. Without a hint of caution. No preamble. Years of solitude colliding in an instant. He pressed me softly against the wall, his hands cradling my face as if he were etching my features into his memory. My coat remains draped over my shoulders. My fingers quiver. His mouth held the rich flavor of coffee, mingling with an elusive essence I couldn't quite identify. We remained clothed, yet our touch conveyed a sense of urgency, as if this moment could slip away from us forever. This felt like the sole hour we would ever be granted. February 21st, 2:06 a.m. I revisited every moment in my thoughts, akin to a melody that lingered, impossible to shake off. The whisper of his breath. The manner in which he uttered my name carried a weight of pain. My tears flowed freely, yet he remained silent, never inquiring about the reason behind my sorrow. Found myself unable to sleep. I was unable to. I reclined beside my husband, my gaze fixed upon the ceiling above. He shifted in his slumber, murmuring indistinct words. I inched forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Tom's a good man," he murmured, his voice carrying a sense of reverie. "It brings me joy to know he's by your side." Air eluded me. The following day I steered clear of Tom. He sent a message. I remained silent. He lingered in the shadows of the hospital entrance. I chose to stay in. For now it had become tangible. It had transcended mere contemplation, a fleeting glance, or the possibility of something more. At this moment I had allowed it to unfold. It was something I had longed for. I had embraced it fully. And a part of me loathed my own existence. Yet a smaller part, one I endeavored to dismiss, longed to experience that touch once more. February 23rd. 4:30 p.m. He intercepted me by the stairwell. Calm and composed. Unassuming. Merely existing. "That wasn't part of my plan," he remarked. "I understand. I held no regrets about it either." I gazed at him, then truly gazed. And I was aware. We had moved beyond the facade of pretense. In the quiet between us, every word remained unspoken. All that remained was the descent. February 28th, 7:42 am. As I stood by the toaster, the warm aroma of bread filling the air, my husband glanced up from his newspaper and remarked, "You seem far away lately." The toast met its unfortunate fate in the fiery embrace of the toaster. I hesitated before responding. I gazed at the toaster as if it had committed an unforgivable act of treachery. "You seem weary," I finally remarked. He smiled, a bittersweet acknowledgement, filled with understanding. "You are as well." For the first time in weeks, he regarded me with the same gaze he once did, as if he recalled my identity, who we once were. In that fleeting instant, I yearned to surrender myself to him once more, to obliterate all that came before, to feign that I remained the same. Yet I had. For 5 long days Tom and I remained silent, our words suspended in the air between us. Silence prevails. It was on that fateful night that I discovered him in the quiet sanctuary of the hospital chapel. He sat alone in the last pew, as if he were attempting to fade into the shadows of the empty space around him. He remained oblivious to my presence as I settled down beside him. "I've been pondering," he remarked at last. "I feel the same." He faced me then, his eyes weary, his voice barely above a whisper. "This transcends mere necessity." "Is it so?" I gulped. "Absolutely not. I believe I am succumbing to the depths of love for you." My breath hitched. "And I loathe myself for it," he added. It was at that moment that my fingers brushed against his cheek, for I wanted him to understand that I loathed myself as well. Love often comes wrapped in unexpected forms, and at the most unpredictable moments. March 1st, 10:14 p.m. We found ourselves gathered at my residence. I informed my husband that I would be going for a walk. He accepted it without hesitation. Tom arrived 20 minutes later. Silence speaks volumes. Without a moment's doubt. This time we pressed on without pause. It lacked softness. It was anything but slow. It was a scene of utter desperation. We clawed at the distance that separated us as if it had betrayed us. His lips brushed against my neck, my fingers tangled in his hair, both of us striving to erase the reality of our actions even as we surrendered to them more fervently. In the aftermath, I found myself perched on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down my cheeks. He embraced me bare-chested in silence. I cannot remain your hidden truth for eternity, he declared. I understand. I yearn to be selected. I understand. So you've made your decision not to choose me, haven't you? I remained silent. For silence too conveys a response. On the morning of March 3rd, at precisely 6:08 a.m. my husband rose with the dawn. His gaze lingered on me as I slipped into my clothes. Is there something I ought to be aware of? He inquired. I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. He kept his voice steady, did not place any blame. I simply waited. I parted my lips, yet the truth lodged itself in my throat. Then he remarked, Tom's been behaving oddly as well. I took a seat. He gazed at me with eyes burdened by the weight of countless experiences. If this is occurring, please just be honest with me. In that moment it dawned on me. He was aware. He had been aware. In that instant I experienced a vulnerability unlike any I had known previously.
Apollo disse, I murmured.
He inclined his head in acknowledgement. Not for the act itself, he remarked. Yet, you did not inform me earlier. And then, I always sensed you would select a person who brought you back to the essence of living. That morning tears streamed down my face in the kitchen. Yet Tom remained silent. On the 10th of March at precisely 3:02 in the morning, the sound of the machines reached my ears before anything else. The tone remains flat and unbroken. Suddenly, a flurry of activity erupted. Nurses hurriedly moved about. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, and a voice urgently summoned a doctor. I stood in the hallway, coffee clutched tightly in my hand, my gaze fixed on the door to his room, as if it held the power to swing open and wipe away all that had transpired. It did not. He passed away in silence.
No concluding remarks.
No sudden intakes of breath. Simply vanished. I held back my tears at first. I lingered by his bedside, gazing at his features, at the delicate way his hands lay folded. I removed his ring with my own hands, not intended for formal occasions. I could no longer endure witnessing it upon him. Tom arrived an hour later. He refrained from inquiring about the events that transpired. There was no necessity for him to do so. We lingered on the hospital bench, enveloped in a heavy silence. The hallway exuded an unusual chill. Perhaps I did, after all. He was aware, I remarked. Tom inclined his head in acknowledgement. I believe that to be the case. He never uttered those words. Yet he was aware. We remained untouched. There was no necessity for that. March 15th, 2:26 p.m. The gathering for the funeral was intimate. Only family and a handful of dear friends. I lingered by the casket, offering gratitude to those who averted their gaze. Tom lingered in the shadows. He departed prior to the concluding prayer. Since that moment he has remained absent from my sight. At times I ponder the possibilities of what might have been. What might have been, had circumstances aligned differently. Had our paths crossed prior to the cancer? Had I possessed more courage? Had he only waited? Yet, affection that emerges from sorrow is seldom the type that endures it. We were both aware of that truth. The journals remain in my possession. I find myself revisiting the entry from that night when Tom first laid his hands on me. Not that I wish to revisit it. Yet it serves as a poignant reminder of my humanity. A fleeting echo of what once was. Feeble. Starving. Truthful. I adored two men. I interred one. And one I never had the courage to grasp. There are those who claim that grief diminishes over time. Mine did not. It simply transformed its essence. Now it carries the flavor of silence, of words left unspoken, of a kiss that never had the chance to bid farewell. April 1st, 5:03 p.m. Today I happened upon Tom at the grocery store. In a few words, he found himself wandering through the produce aisle. He failed to notice my presence. Perhaps he did after all. Yet he did not make his way over. I chose not to approach him. For there are moments when the affection you entomb alongside another is not the sole love that perishes with their departure.